All right, so everybody, again, if you're listening for the first time, we hope that you are listening for more than the first time. But if you are listening for the first time, please share this. This is an interview that, out of any of the interviews that I've done, and I've done tons of interviews with all kinds of different people, this is an interview that we really want to get out to the most people as possible. If you're listening to us on YouTube, we'll go through this quick. In the podcasting websites, subscribe, like, share. Make sure you share out of anything. If you're listening to us on one of the radio stations and you're just listening to the interview, obviously you can't do that. We hope that you tell people about this story if you're hearing it for the first time. If not, just keep talking about this story. We're trying to keep it in the news. This has been going on for 17 years. This is a story as a person like that's my age in their 30s. I grew up hearing about this story and it's still going on. This is a story about Jennifer Kesse. She is 5'8". She's blonde. She went to UCF, did her undergraduate degree. She worked at Westgate Lakes and as far as a financial advisor there. And we have her dad on, Drew Kesse. And before we get into Drew's, and I appreciate him coming on, I want to just give a little bit more of a synopsis before he gets into his daughter's story. Jennifer Kesse, again, was at her time of abduction was a financial analyst at Westgate Lakes in Ocoee, Florida. For people that don't know the state of Florida, we're talking about Orlando, Central Florida, not that far away from Disney World, kind of that I-Drive area. So again, we have Drew Kesse here on the program. I want the listeners to really listen to this. I know people's attention spans right now at 10 seconds or less. Please give this story a fair shot. Please, if you heard anything about Jennifer, if you know anything about this story, and, please, for the people listening, this isn't a game. These people have been through hell for 17 years. This is not call up and crank call and act like a fool. If you know anything or you heard anything, just give this number a call. And I'm going to ask Drew to talk about where you can contact before we get into the interview. So, Drew, thanks so much for coming on. If people do know something about Jennifer's disappearance, whether the information has been out there, whether it hasn't, how can they contact? Who should they contact? Because I know the police are not involved as far as OPD anymore.
Right, right. Well, there's a few ways, and we do it this way for reasons. We used to have telephone number. We've done away with it. There's just too many crazy people. And it's too difficult. You can reach me on YouTube, on Instagram. We have a GoFundMe for Jennifer. All those messages come directly to me and I will answer them. I will pass them along to our investigative team. Or you can just Google me and you can find where I live and my telephone number. It's out there, everybody to find. But we don't want to make it easy. We want real information. We want someone to almost have to go out of their way to reach out to us and say, I know something.
And we're also doing this interview to get the straight information out. There's been a lot of podcasts and mainstream media that has done, that you've done interviews with, that they've just been speaking about your story. And I've listened to a lot of them. Some of them give great information. A lot of the other ones don't. And there's a lot of misinformation. So we're trying to come on here and get the truth out there to correct the record of the misinformation and get that truthful information out. So if you do know something about Jennifer's disappearance, you can help us out and try to get that information to Drew and his wife, Joyce, too, and the family in general, because we, personally think that Jennifer is obviously still out there, and we want to try to get her home and get, this family that's been going through hell for the past 17 years an answer. And again, the GoFundMe is, again, GoFundMe.com. Help us find Jennifer Kesse. It's Jennifer. It's Kesse. And definitely search that on GoFundMe rather. These people, again, and this is the last time I'll say, they've been through the ringer, and it costs a lot of money to hire private investigators. And Drew's laughing because he's been through this for 17 years, and you can tell the people about this. This isn't like, a quick $100, and these people are not using this money for their own well-being. They're using this to try to find answers for their daughter and try to bring her home in whatever way she comes.
It costs a lot of money to fight the government.
Well, that's part of the course. And we'll go through a lot of that throughout these interviews with Drew. This is going to be not just a one-time deal. I'm going to go out. We're going to get some pictures of where the apartment complex is. We're going to do a lot of different things on this case and really build it up. And props to the guys from Unconcluded. They really put a lot of heart and soul into that. That podcast is 2 years old. I appreciate what they've done. I try to get in contact with them to maybe bring them on here. I haven't got any answers, but we're going to do our own investigation and try to keep this story out there. Let's kick this around, Drew. So, you know, I guess I want to frame this correctly. So for the people that haven't heard of Jennifer Kesse, can you tell the viewers and the listeners a little bit about her growing up and going through UCF and everything else in the kitchen sink?
Sure. Jennifer was raised in just above Tampa, Odessa, Florida, from 7 years on till she was taken from us, basically. She did great in high school. She went to Gaither High School in Tampa, Florida, graduated with a 5.04 grade point average and went to UCF. Absolutely loved it there. Came out of there cum laude and started to working for Central Florida Investments, which is also Westgate Resorts. She was doing quite well. She worked as a financial analyst, as you said, and her basic job was to start going around into the departments and streamline them. She seemed to be very good at that, and she liked to do that. I'll just say January 19th, 2006, Jennifer and her then boyfriend, Rob Allen, who lived in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, they had a long distance relationship, took a long weekend vacation to visit St. Croix. One of her boyfriend's friends and family had a timeshare down there. And there was about 8 family members down there, and they went down for a long weekend. They came back. Jennifer and her boyfriend, they did vice versa weekends. One came one weekend up to her house, one weekend down to his house. And they'd stay till Monday morning and go directly to work from wherever. So Fort Lauderdale was 2.5 hours away from Jennifer's work. She came home Monday night. She came home Sunday night from there. Went to work Monday morning, regular. Went through work Monday. Came home and called us at 6 p.m. Spoke to pretty much everyone, her mom, me, her brother, all of her friends and what have you. Very, very jovial and great spirits, had a fantastic time. She called me 3 times from the island. In fact, and I'm like, well, you're there for 4 days. Why don't you just go have fun? You don't have to call your father. But she was excited because it was first time in the islands. And she came back. She went to work on January 24th, did all day. She left her boss at approximately 5:30, and they had a morning meeting also, but they basically went to their cars together, left. She called us, said hi and all that good stuff that night, and never made it the next day to work, as we found out. Fortunately, she worked for a friend of mine within the company. And after literally about an hour and a half of her not showing up, because she was very punctual and she had a meeting to go to, our friend called us and said, hey, is everything okay with Jennifer? She didn't show up today and she had a meeting to go to. And she didn't live with us at that point. She was in Orlando already. She had bought a $250,000 condo, basically, with her own money, and lived in it 2 months to the day. So I got a call, and my wife Joyce got a call also as soon as our friend hung up with me. And I said, well, no, but let me find out. She answers our call. And I hung up and I called Jennifer. And for the first time since she was 15 years old that we gave her her phone, the rule was always, if your mom's name pops up or your dad's name pops up, I don't care where you are, you answer the phone. And she was very good about it, period. She always did it. However, this is the first time when we called her, it didn't ring 4 times and go into voicemail. It went directly into voicemail. We knew something was wrong immediately. We really did. And from that second, my son was still living with us. We gathered him up, and I had to pick my wife up at work, but we took off for Orlando, basically, and 2 hours after she didn't make it to work. By 1 o'clock that afternoon, we met police. First response from police was, well, she had a fight with her boyfriend. She'll be back. And they walked out. 4 o'clock that afternoon on January 24th, 2006, we were passing out thousands of flyers on the corners. News picked it up. And from that point forth, she was person number 1 in Orlando, and she just got away from us. So that's the basic story of how Jennifer, and we've gone 17 years. After after 13 years, Joyce and I went to court with a legal team to gain access to Jennifer's files. We did not feel that they were doing a good enough job, and we became basically one of the first people in America to have open files, active case given to us. Once we received the files, it was very disappointing because we could see what was going on, and we asked, well, where is all the work from the past 12 years? And the response through their legal department was, no one has written anything in the last 12 years. So Jennifer's case has not really been investigated in the last 12 years, and we're glad we found that out. I personally have a team of retired law enforcement who is my investigative team. They've done an incredible job. It's just quite recently that we finally came to grips with the state and the state attorneys, and we have removed Jennifer's case from Orlando Police Department. It is now with Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and we will have the opportunity to, they will have the opportunity to work the case hopefully properly, but more specifically, get the physical evidence. We've had 12 years of technology advancement, and we have 12 years of physical evidence sitting in a locker somewhere. And we hope that, well, we know they have it, but we hope we got it all. So we're off to the races. My investigative team is working side by side with Florida Department of Law Enforcement and anything that they need. And we hope to find out definitively whether Jennifer is with us or not. I personally do not think she's with us. I think she probably fought at some point, but I need to know where my daughter is, period. I just need that much of her, period. But we'll go from there. Otherwise, we will exhaust everything possible, and we'll have to wait for, as you see, the DNA and genealogy and someone walking upon. I mean, just yesterday, they found someone from 1976 in a car in a river.
Jeez.
So,
yeah.
I hope to find Jennifer before I die. We do have a son, and I don't want him to have to continue on doing what I've done for 17 years. But we have great hope that Jennifer's going to get a good shake at it this time around. We know there's work to be done. We have work to be done. So let's go do it.
Drew, you brought up a lot there, and I want to dig into some of the stuff, but let's go back to the 23rd, because I feel like been a lot of misinformation, again, that's been put out by the news media and some of these podcasts. They speak about a knock on the door. Can you go back into that and say, a lot of people were saying that there was a knock on the door. Did Jennifer answer that? Was that night, or was that another night? Let's start with that. What's your opinion on that? Can you clarify that with the viewers and the listeners?
Yes. Yeah. There was a knock on the door. Jennifer was on the phone with her very good friend in another state, and the knock was on the door. Jennifer had just come home that night.
So this was sorry to interrupt. This was on the 23rd then. Correct.
23rd. Yeah, this day before she went missing. Yeah, that evening, probably around 6:30 to 7 o'clock or somewhere around there. And she was talking with a friend, and a knock was on the door. And through that friend's testimony, she took a look out, and it was the neighbor above her knocking on the door. And she said, "I'm not going to answer." And that was it. Nothing to it.
Was that neighbor above her interviewed by the police?
Yes.
Now, was he outed to? He's
very, very, very shallow interview, so to say. Not much. Most of because I have read the files.
Yes.
The investigation is very lacking. Let's put it that way.
Right.
And we. I don't want to get into too much of that because.
Yeah, I know you can only say certain stuff, and I don't want to put the press on it. But go ahead.
Yeah, I can sit here and bitch all day long about what wasn't done and this and that. That doesn't get us to where we need to be.
Correct. Yes.
But they're, they know they've made mistakes. They said they've made mistakes. Everyone knows it. So let's move on. But yeah, there's opportunity there, and we're going to take it.
Okay, because there was people that were saying there was a knock on the door. Other people said there was not. That was a week prior. Okay, I just wanted to get that out so we can, again, correct. It's all about correcting that misinformation and make sure we're building up on factual information. Yeah. The cell phone issue.
Just so you know, also a gentleman at her work that said that He was late to work that day because he got
Correct. Yes.
oh, that was actually the previous Tuesday.
Right. Yeah, I think I heard that. I heard that also, and yeah, there was back and forth about that. Let's talk about the cell phone, and you brought that up a little bit earlier when you were speaking. There was talk that the cell phone was shut off, and then there was also talk that the batteries were taken out. Was that true? There was talk also that when Rob called on the 24th that there was ringing, then there was talk that there was no ringing, as you stated. Can you kind of, give us some information on this?
Sure. Her boyfriend called her. She just didn't answer.
Okay.
She just didn't answer. As far as, I'm sorry, excuse me, the phone. What was the question again? I'm sorry. I know the
No,
answer.
you're good, Drew. We can edit this around. It's not a problem. The question was, excuse me, there was talk that,
Oh, yeah, to have the phone.
okay,
Yeah.
go ahead.
The cell phone, as we find out, was manually disabled. Someone physically, as we're told by technology, someone took the battery out physically.
Okay.
A person. It wasn't destroyed. It didn't run out of battery. I don't know how they can tell that, but at some point through human means, the phone was made battery-wise disabled.
So your son's friend stayed in her condo
Right.
a couple days before. He left his phone there. Jennifer was going to deliver that. And we all know this, that in places like Westgate Resorts and all these big, operations as far as companies, they have FedEx there. They have UPS.
Let me stop you right here and now. Let me shoot this whole theory down.
Okay.
The friend who left his phone, I've known him since he's 3 years old. He's
Right.
almost part of this family. He's known Jennifer since he's 3 years old. Jennifer wasn't running out that night to get his phone back to him.
Right.
She'll get it back when she gets it back, and she knew he needed it and what have you. It's not not for Travis.
Yeah, we all know these places, Drew. Yeah, it's that you can send this UPS or FedEx at all these places, and you don't have to go and run around daily. And where was she gonna go in the middle of the night anyway? To FedEx or UPS, unless she went maybe to the airport and they might have had something, but that's kind of like really far-fetched if we're going that realm. But go ahead.
Not traveling, coming in at 6:30 at night, and then run out for Travis to get his phone to him. I'm sure she told Travis, "Well, that's a little bit too bad. You should have remembered it."
Okay. Well, thank you for clearing that up. Because like I said, there's a lot of misinformation out there. We want to make sure we get the facts straight on this.
Absolutely. We do too.
So on the 23rd,
Mm-hmm.
and this is going back again to the Unconcluded podcast. They did a good job. There was a lot of people. I'm sure you got these same calls with these people that, some maybe they were truthful, some maybe they were trying to somehow get involved in this story. I don't know. I think that's mentally ill, but to do that, there's a lot of whacked out people out there. But regardless of that, they interviewed this woman who was so-called called Erica. She worked at Northbridge. She talked about the day that week, and I don't know if you heard this story, maybe you did. That week, Jennifer went over there. She signed a name card, said she was looking for an apartment. This woman supposedly was talking to Jennifer, and Jennifer seemed like she was kind of in trouble, like she was looking around, like she was hiding from someone and just was in there. And then on the night of the 23rd, the same woman says that she called the police because there was a 5'7", 5'8" woman with blonde hair that was taken in a car. She was put in there by, just shoved in this car. Regardless of that, have you heard this? Do you believe this? Like you said, you know Jennifer the best out of anybody, you and your wife. It seems like if Jennifer watched Law and Order all the time, if she had the type of relationship that you guys had together, that you told each other everything, and she was going to work at 6 or 7 o'clock the next morning, she wouldn't be out at 8, 9, 10 o'clock in her pajamas with men.
Yeah, no, I've heard the story. I know the story. I've heard it all. Um,
Okay.
we can't correlate anything to Jennifer on that. That may have happened to someone, may have,
Yeah.
but I don't know if that woman actually looked at a name card that said Jennifer Kesse. I doubt that very much. Jennifer had just moved into a brand new, beautiful place that she loved. She wasn't looking for an apartment.
Right.
And it was close. Northbridge is close. It's right there. But she wasn't in. No, it just doesn't correlate in any way other than the fact that someone said that she wrote Jennifer down or Jennifer Kesse. No, we can't place her there. We can't put her there. I don't personally. I can't go along with that story because I just that's not what I see. But hey, you got to take it for what somebody says. It's we haven't been able to constitute anything on it.
What about the story with there was an African American black man in Tennessee had a woman that by the he was basically probably human trafficking the girl or in some sort of abusive relationship with this girl. There was an elderly woman that called in, again going back to the unconcluded podcast. The woman so-called said she believed it was Jennifer. This woman was a little older. I believe the woman in that she saw a woman. Maybe it did look like Jennifer. Obviously, we don't know if it's the person. It's very hard. This was, either a year later or a couple of months later. And she didn't obviously report this for, I think it was 12 to 13 years later. This could be a human trafficking event. We don't know, obviously. What is your opinion on that?
Well, I heard it. I know it. It was in a jewelry store, actually.
Right.
She was the young lady was actually trying to communicate that she was not in a good way.
Right.
Without proper law enforcement follow up at the time, how do you even go about that? How do you
With the woman, just to push back, Drew, when they talked about the diamond ring and the past, present, and future, and they said when Jennifer was missing, and you can correct the record on this if this is true or not, that she had some sort of either necklace or jewelry with that on, and the woman said that that was the only piece of jewelry in the store that woman, we don't know who it was, of course, really was fond of, that actually liked. And then obviously the woman grabbed this other woman's arm and it was a broken wrist. And then they left and they went to either so-called Georgia or Huntsville, Alabama. Regardless of that, what would you say to something like that? Was that true that Jennifer had that? Do it seems.
Jennifer did have past, present, and future. She did. Okay. That we don't have. Okay. It's not the only one made.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
But you have to, unfortunately, you have to have, when we hear these things and they get passed on, and you try and follow up with law enforcement and say, yeah, okay, we've done the follow-up. Well, you hope that they've done the follow-up. So there's a lot of, you have to put your faith in law enforcement because you can't do it. I can't do it. I mean, I could go about do it, but I can't bring them in. Never hold report, things like that, the whole thing. So was there a blonde, blue-eyed white girl in there with a black? Are you kidding me? Of course, there's a possibility that someone else was been trafficked and taken. Of course,
sure.
Of course, Jennifer is very common. We had a crack whore that the police they went right into a crack house after because Jennifer Kesse's up there on Holden Avenue. She's in there. It's Jennifer. And it's it's just a crack whore named Jennifer. So we've had so many of that. But if you don't have an agency willing to work it properly and to go to the end of, well, no, we spoke to this woman and we tried to follow up and we couldn't follow up, or we did follow up, you leave that into law enforcement's hands. And isn't that what everyone hopes? Yeah. When law enforcement has to get involved, is that they know what they're doing?
Let's talk about what happened at Westgate Lakes. The manager liked Jennifer. he must have, and you know more about this, so I don't want to say too much because, again, we want to make sure we have the record corrected. The manager wanted to go out with Jennifer. Jennifer obviously didn't want to do that. She spoke to you and Joyce about that. You told her, and we spoke on the phone about this, that, go to a lunch with him, tell him, hey, listen, I don't date somebody I don't work with. And hopefully that'll be the game, set, match, and be over with. Talk about that, because there was a complaint, I believe, like 5-6 years later after the disappearance started with a worker, and it was about a manager. The manager said that if Jennifer was dead already and she was in crocodile.
Women with the alligators. Yeah.
Yeah, with the alligators. So, that's kind of suspicious. Again, we don't want to put the suspicion out there. That's for the law enforcement and your investigators to do. But anybody that says that they have to have a real gripe with someone, or they have to have something that maybe they're hiding if they're saying something like that. What is your opinion on what happened with the manager at Westgate Lakes? And also, there was also talk that this man that made a report against the manager also liked Jennifer. So he could have, I'm sorry to laugh, but he could have been going after the manager to take eyes off him. So, like, you can't make this stuff up, Drew. I mean, this is like really sick stuff, man.
We sit here 3 hours and just talk about that little combination. But no, Jennifer was approached by a manager at her work to have a date. He liked her. She just does not date. It was her policy. She just doesn't date people at work. I told her, have lunch with him, tell him, and hopefully that will be done with it. I thought that happened. I think that happened. And that was the end of it, of which I knew. I did find out after she was taken that he was married when he's asking her out on a date. I don't think she knew that. Otherwise, she would have told me, like, this guy's cracked. But these are things, you said a very suspicious thing. These are things that have to be looked into.
Yeah. I want to go back to the apartment complex. Obviously, there was a lot of legal immigrants there working. We've went through this story, us together, and then I've listened to many podcasts about that. The police come, these guys are gone. I mean, whether they were involved in this, which they might have, they could have been, or they weren't, these guys are undocumented. They're not going to hang around and answer questions for the police, whether they speak English or they don't. These guys are trying to stay in this country. They're not trying to get knocked out. So talk about that. There was a lot of issues with this guy and you can correct the record on this. There's supposedly Chino and Ben. And apparently from what I've done my research on, this Chino guy was arrested a couple years later. There's also was talk in this unconcluded podcast that Chino and Ben used to be friends with this girl that lived in the apartment complex. They hung around on weekends, and then all of a sudden they just up and left and moved out, him and his girlfriend. So there's a lot of suspicious stories, and we could go on this for days and hours and weeks and months. But let's go into that, especially those two guys. And then all of a sudden this guy leaves the apartment complex very fast with his girlfriend, and this other guy is also kind of suspicious, and they're always in Jennifer's apartment fixing things and all these other apartments because they were redoing all the condos in the complex.
Yeah. And again, what you're stating and reflecting upon, doesn't it ask more questions? Shouldn't law enforcement be asking more questions? Of course. Very sensible. First of all, both of those workers were actually true employees of her complex.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so they worked for the complex themselves. They weren't day workers or anything like that. Ben was actually management of maintenance, and Chino worked with him and under him. Sure, there's questions for both of them, and we hope that they'll be asked. As far as illegals are concerned, absolutely. And to the extent that the complex was letting workers live for free in the open units, so they didn't have to go collect them every day. So they would actually have workers on site so they could do the work that they need to do and get done. We found that out afterwards also. So you have a lot of transient people. When the police showed up, unfortunately, in 2006, within the detective department in Orlando Police Department, there was no Spanish-speaking detectives. So
Wow,
they're
that's crazy. In Orlando, that's insane.
right? Yeah. So in their infinite wisdom, they said, whoever speaks English, stay here. Anyone else will get to you. What do you think?
You can't make this stuff up. I'm sorry. This is, I'm smiling, but this is not a joke. This is insanity.
Right. And these are the things that we have to say, okay, that's behind us. How do we move forward from that?
Right.
We can't sit here and do the pity party on that.
Yeah.
What can we garner out of it to make us and help us move forward? But it's a challenge at every turn, because at every turn, this is what you get at every turn for 17 years.
I want to go into these last two questions, and I do want to have you on again because we got a lot of questions on this story, but I don't want to do them all today. Let's move into this with the last question. There was a lot of issues from what I heard with, and again, we go back to 2006. Obviously, the technology wasn't what it is now. I know you guys and the police and stuff, they worked with NASA, they worked with Walmart, all these companies to try to blow up this image of this person of interest that we obviously still don't know. And those cameras were over 30 years old. They had been rotting in the sun. I mean, it's very hard to kind of distinguish this person. But with that said, I was told that there was like 20 seconds missing from that camera footage. Now, whether that would have helped the investigation or it was nothing, that's another story for another day. Can you speak to that? Is there truth to that there was 20 seconds missing? If there is, did you guys see that with getting all the records? What is the truth with all this?
No, I've never heard 20 seconds missing. No.
Okay.
The person sat in Jennifer's car for 32 seconds.
Right.
And then the footage that you can see is basically picked up at 32 seconds. It's him exiting the car. So he had already been in there. There's a few things that I have not seen in the physical evidence. Okay. I have not seen that, number one, just so you know. The previous, I've seen, what we put out and what have you. Okay. But there's 3 cameras, and I've only seen film from 2. So whether the 3rd camera, I'm trying to find it out, but and it's really weird because when we got all the video, you could imagine it was in 10 different type digital formats and what have you. It's not of today's format. So they actually gave it to us and said, well, go out and find the equipment to play it. We're not giving it. So my team has worked with that. So I haven't seen a lot of the video that needed to be descrambled or old equipment and stuff like that. But I've seen a lot, but I haven't seen the stuff that really needs some looking at, which is why I went out and tried to find someone to help us. I'm just a salesman. My wife's just a nurse. And we're just trying to find our daughter. It's crazy that what you have to go through to do it. It's crazy, but